My husband, Liam Hayes, was in a car accident. Physically, his injuries weren't severe, but the impact had caused some minor bleeding in his brain. Before I was allowed to see him, the doctor pulled me aside to explain what that could mean, warning me about potential side effects like dizziness or even memory loss. He told me to be prepared for anything. So, when Liam finally woke up and looked at me with an unfamiliar coldness in his eyes, asking, "Who are you?" I managed a gentle smile. "Liam, I'm your wife, Anna Reed," I said softly, stroking his arm with a tenderness that felt more deliberate than usual. "Do you really not remember anything? We were in love for 6 years, and we've been married for 2. In just over a month, our baby will be born. Aren't you excited about becoming a father?" Liam's gaze drifted to my swollen belly, and for a fleeting moment, a flicker of guilt crossed his face before he shook his head with renewed certainty. "That's impossible. Chloe and I are childhood sweethearts. We've been together since our first year of high school. There's no way someone like you could have come between us." He turned his head toward Chloe Vance, who was standing on the other side of the bed, and reached out to her. "It's always been us, hasn't it?" he asked, his voice full of conviction. "Even this accident, we were together, taking the impact side by side. We've always shared everything, the good and the bad." Chloe offered a strained, awkward smile but took his outstretched hands, holding them tightly. The afternoon sun filtered through the thin hospital curtains, casting them both in a soft, ethereal glow. It made the dust motes dancing in the air look like part of a hazy, dreamlike painting, reminding me of all those afternoons in high school when they would kiss under the setting sun. Back then, they would be lost in their romance while I sat nearby, quietly poring over textbooks and practice exams. If a teacher happened to walk by, I was their cover, pretending to be tutoring them. I played that part for 3 years. I was fully aware that I was just an accessory to their relationship, but it was a role I accepted willingly. I did it because I was poor, and because my parents, who favored my brother, had never seen any value in me. Despite earning the top score in the entire city on my high school entrance exam, they still refused to pay for my education. It was only through a special program at a prestigious private academy, which recruited 10 exceptional students from impoverished backgrounds each year with the promise of generous scholarships and cash awards for college admission, that I was able to continue my studies. Good grades should have been a student's greatest asset, but at that school they meant very little. The entire institution was built on a foundation of wealth and connections. For a brilliant but poor student, the best-case scenario was a future as a high-level technician working for one of our classmates' family companies. You can imagine how I was treated there. Faced with constant mockery and dismissive glances, I remember thinking that I shouldn't have come. There was even a dark moment when I considered running back home and letting my parents marry me off to some wealthy old man, just to end the struggle. But I was fortunate, in a way. Chloe took me under her wing, allowing me to be the third wheel in her and Liam's orbit. I recall her once saying, "The other girls are too charming. If they hang around Liam too much, what if he gets tempted?" She then looked at me. "But someone like you, so poor and plain, even if you are pretty, you're just a man's plaything. No rich man would ever truly love you." I can't remember what I felt in that moment. I only remember that she gave me 10,000 yuan, my payment for 3 years of service as her glorified handmaiden. To most, that sum wouldn't be worth their dignity, but to me it was a lifeline. "Why are you still here?" Liam's voice, sharp with annoyance, pulled me from my thoughts. His brow was furrowed in frustration. I maintained my composure and smiled. "All right, I'll go home now. You need to take care of yourself." I then turned to Chloe, giving her a slight polite nod. "Chloe, I'll be counting on you for the next few days. Thank you for looking after him." Her eyes held a trace of pity. "Anna, I'm so sorry. It's Liam and me, we've wronged you. But I love him so much I can't live without him. Please just let him go, okay?" I looked silently at Liam. He was staring at my pregnant stomach again, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Chloe quickly buried her face in his neck, her voice trembling with manufactured tears. "Liam, if I don't have you, I can't go on. You promised me. You said that after the crash, you'd divorce her and marry me." At her words, any indecision in Liam's expression vanished. He looked at me with cold finality. "Anna, I don't know what happened between us, but I'm certain of one thing. I could never love you. Let's get a divorce." A bitter laugh almost escaped me. "Chloe Vance, do you truly love Liam Hayes? And Liam, do you truly not remember anything that happened between us?" The turning point for the three of us came right after the national college entrance exams. I achieved my long-held dream of being accepted into a top university and received the 500,000 yuan award the academy had promised. Although most of it was taken by my parents and brother, I finally had some savings of my own, and for the first time, I felt like I could breathe freely. Liam's academic performance was always average, but through his family's connections, he used a special pathway for international students to get into a prestigious university as well. Only Chloe, despite all her family's efforts, managed a shockingly low score on her exams. In the end, her only option was to study abroad in the United Kingdom. Initially, Liam and Chloe tried to maintain their long-distance relationship. They had daily video calls, whispered sweet nothings, and Liam would fly to the UK during every holiday. But over time, the passion of youth clashed with the realities of being an ocean apart. Their mutual pride, his as a privileged young man, hers as a pampered princess, meant neither was willing to compromise, and their relationship imploded in a dramatic, bitter fashion. In an attempt to provoke Liam, Chloe sent him photos of herself in bed with several European men, accompanied by a message he would never forget: "Stop trying so hard. Your scrawny body could never satisfy me. I'll never love you again." Liam was consumed by rage. He wanted to fly to the UK and confront her, his pride unable to stomach being cheated on so brazenly. His parents couldn't stop him, but I did. I was the one who held him back, using all my strength. To both of them, I had always been an inconsequential tag-along, a loyal sidekick. But I considered them friends because regardless of their motives, they had helped me navigate the most desperate and impoverished years of my life. I never expected that after all their self-destruction, Liam would choose me as his girlfriend. When I asked him why, I remember the dismissive, contemptuous look in his eyes as he answered, "The person Chloe despises most is you. To her, you'll always be the lowest, most worthless creature. That's exactly why I want to love you. I want to lift you up so high that she has to look up to you. I want her to see that in my eyes, you're worth more than she ever was. I want her to regret this for the rest of her life." Was I hurt by his words? I probably should have been, but I agreed. The more I saw of the world, the more I understood that poverty was the most difficult chasm to cross. I needed a platform, a higher starting point, and Liam was the most accessible one. Now that he had gone back to Chloe, I had once again become the person to be discarded. But that was fine. I had already secured the thing I desired most: financial stability and wealth. As for love, I had never dared to hope for it. When I agreed to be Liam's girlfriend in college, I had only one condition: a monthly allowance of 200,000 yuan. Some might have called it selling myself, but I never saw it that way. We functioned as a real couple. I wasn't a mistress, and he wasn't a sugar daddy. The allowance was simply an additional term of our arrangement. The reason I demanded money was because it was my safety net. My instincts told me that the moment Chloe returned, I would be cast aside. I was fortunate that Chloe remained infatuated with her European flings, which allowed me to continue earning from our relationship while investing heavily in my own self-improvement. With that money, I hired private tutors to correct my stilted spoken English, eventually mastering a polished London accent that was admired in upper-class circles, all without ever leaving the country. With that money, I took one-on-one lessons in Spanish and French, and even convinced Liam to travel across Europe with me during a summer break. The country girl I once was could now switch fluently between 3 foreign languages. With that money, I enrolled in etiquette classes with renowned instructors to refine my fashion sense, grooming, and social graces. With that money, I could finally build a social network, no longer afraid to join a dinner party simply because I couldn't afford the bill. Most importantly, with that money, I purchased a large condominium in the city during my first year of earning residency there. That residency permit was also part of my plan. Initially, the safest path would have been to take the civil service exam or pursue graduate school. But when I thought of my family, those leeches who had drained me for years, I abandoned the idea of a stable government career. That path came with too many moral expectations and would have left me shackled to them forever. Still, I needed the residency. So I leveraged my university degree and Liam's connections to secure a position at a government-affiliated institution. I stayed just long enough to obtain my household registration. Then I promptly quit and paid the required penalty. It was a shameless move, I admit, but I felt I had no other choice. I wanted to get rich, and I wanted to be untouchable, even by my own family. The only way to achieve that was to start my own business. As I threw myself into my entrepreneurial ventures and began to see some success, almost forgetting that Liam was still technically my boyfriend, he suddenly proposed. It was graduation season, a time typically for breakups. He never explicitly told me we were ending things, but he did leave for the UK without a word. I didn't know or care about what transpired between him and Chloe during that time. I only knew he returned to China shrouded in a deep melancholy. I assumed our chapter was definitively closed, but then he unexpectedly came back to me. "Anna," he said, "even though I'm still torn up about Chloe, and even though I don't love you, marry me. I want to make her understand that as long as it's my choice, even a woman she once treated like dirt can become a high society wife." If you asked me if I was willing to be a substitute, I wouldn't know how to answer. It was a strange, complex feeling, not quite resentment, but certainly not full acceptance. By then, I had become accomplished in many areas and had plenty of other suitors, but I was clear-eyed about my reality. Compared to the powerful Hayes family, I was still just moss growing at the base of a towering tree. I needed that tree for shelter, and so I married him. The wedding was a grand, lavish affair. Everyone said I had landed a golden husband, that I had successfully married into wealth and climbed the social ladder. Only I knew that to me, Liam was simply my boss. His parents, my supposed in-laws, were also my bosses. In this marriage, disguised as love, I did everything possible to be the perfect daughter-in-law and wife. Only by playing my part well could I access more resources and grow my own business empire. Beneath the surface of our seemingly happy life, I was always waiting for the inevitable divorce, especially after Chloe returned to the country. I noticed immediately how they became entangled again. First, he stopped coming home at night. Then came the arguments with his parents. When he decided he wanted a divorce, he didn't tell me first. He went to his parents. It was almost funny. In his eyes, I had never truly mattered, never been worthy of his emotional consideration. But my willingness to divorce didn't mean I would quietly give up my rights. I was not a doormat for Liam and Chloe to use and discard. The only thing that seemed to spark a trace of guilt in Liam was the fact that I was pregnant and suffering from severe morning sickness. Then came the car accident. It provided him with the perfect pretext, allowing him to blame his desire for a divorce on memory loss. It was a convenient way to absolve himself of guilt, as if the amnesia could wash away his responsibility. Now that the final act had begun, I could finally rest. True to his word, Liam had the divorce papers drawn up within 3 days. My hands trembled as I took them, my eyes brimming with tears. "Liam," I said, my voice thick with bitterness. 6 years! Even a stone would have warmed by now. Are you telling me you never felt anything for me? Were the 6 years I devoted to you just a joke? Is this child I'm carrying just a figment of my imagination? My performance escalated from a few carefully shed tears to me squatting on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably like the most abandoned woman in the world. The grief was partly an act, but the tears were real. Even if our marriage was a transaction for security and money, even if every night of intimacy was just part of a performance, it was still 6 years of my life. Liam reached out, as if to brush away my messy hair, but stopped himself. "Anna, you've always been the strongest woman I know. Please don't cry like this. I'm sorry." "You really are incredible. You're the best wife and daughter-in-law anyone could ask for. But I've always loved Chloe more, you know that. You stayed with me for 6 years, but I waited for her for 6 years too." I couldn't bear to hear him say it, even though I had always known it was the truth. I continued to weep, refusing to let my inner disgust show. He sighed and took back the divorce papers. Half a day later, his lawyer delivered a new version. The lawyer looked at me with a half smile. "Ms. Reed, I must say you're quite impressive. You used the Hayes family's connections to open a beauty clinic that has become a wildly profitable enterprise. And now, you've managed to walk away with multiple properties and over $100 million in cash. My respects." I wiped my tears away and replied with a sigh, "If I had a choice, I would have preferred to grow old with someone." The lawyer just shook his head with a grin. "No matter how clever a man is, he's no match for a woman's tears. The fact that Mr. Hayes gave in so easily proves you still mean something to him. Otherwise, no amount of crying would have worked. He doubled your compensation in just half a day." I didn't argue. I simply let the tears fall as I signed my name. My eyes are a precious asset. I wouldn't waste tears unless they yielded a return. From beginning to end, I never uttered a single complaint about the Hayes family or Liam, not even towards Chloe, who had dismantled my marriage. I maintained my dignity, ended things gracefully, and walked away. From that point on, I would love only myself and the daughter who was about to be born. Even in the final weeks of my pregnancy, I remained immersed in my work. My career was the only thing that gave me true security. In the preceding 2 years, I had expanded my beauty clinic business to 3 locations across the country. The number was small, but each clinic was positioned as a luxury brand, catering exclusively to wealthy women and high-profile celebrities, and the income was substantial. Because I came from poverty, I feared it more than anyone. I was determined to provide myself and my daughter with the best possible life. Every time we celebrated a grand opening or acquired a new asset, my daughter would kick cheerfully inside me, as if celebrating with me. I looked forward to meeting her more than anything. Finally, on a crisp autumn Saturday morning, she arrived. Her cries were loud and clear, announcing her presence to the world. I named her Maya. I chose that name because while I had been forced to grow up wild in a landscape of hardship, I hoped she could grow up bold and carefree, surrounded by wealth and security. I hadn't asked for romantic love or affection from my family, but the one thing I truly yearned for was genuine emotional connection. Now, in this world, I finally had someone to love wholeheartedly. I was holding Maya when Mrs. Hayes, my former mother-in-law, sat beside me, her smile warm. She gently took Maya's tiny hand. "Anna, you've worked so hard," she said softly. "You've done a wonderful thing for our family." I smiled modestly. I wouldn't dare take credit. But Mrs. Hayes sighed, her expression tightening with worry. When Liam was made a fool of by Chloe back then, he was completely broken, on the verge of collapse. You were the one who stayed by his side, slowly healing him with your gentle nature and guiding him back. We were finally starting to hope he could take over part of the company. But the moment Chloe returned, he turned back into that lovesick boy, partying with her every night and abandoning his responsibilities. These days we're lucky if he even spends a few days in the country. She paused, her voice laced with frustration. "Your father-in-law fell seriously ill recently. I told Liam and Chloe to come back immediately, but he chose to stay in France to celebrate Chloe's birthday rather than come home to his sick father. What kind of son does that? Back then, I told you to endure it a little longer to try to delay the divorce. But you were young, you couldn't hold on. I feel for you out there all alone." "But Anna, I want you to know, your father-in-law and I will never allow that woman Chloe to marry into our family. No matter how well matched our families are on paper, her reputation is in tatters. We can't afford that kind of embarrassment." As I listened to her complain, I remained silent. These were the Hayes family's internal affairs, and I was now an outsider. It wasn't my place to comment. But then Mrs. Hayes grabbed my hand. "Anna, come back home. This family needs you. Maya needs to come home." But the Hayes family had never been my home. They had never truly accepted me, no matter what they claimed now. I remembered when I first started dating Liam, his parents were vehemently against our relationship. I understood. What wealthy family would want their son involved with a poor girl? I never expected their approval. It was only after Liam was nearly destroyed by his obsession with Chloe that they reluctantly tolerated me. But I remembered the contempt in their eyes and the sarcasm in their tone, especially during the first New Year I spent at their house. The entire Hayes clan gathered, laughing and chatting while completely ignoring me. Some went so far as to treat me like a servant, barking orders and deliberately trying to humiliate me. Liam never defended me. When his parents intentionally froze me out, he simply looked away. If he wouldn't stand up for me, who could I rely on? Fortunately, I had mentally prepared myself. I held my breath, maintained a placid smile, and calmly faced it all, refusing to be intimidated. Time and again I was excluded, and time and again I cleaned up the messes Liam created. Eventually, they grew accustomed to my presence and begrudgingly accepted my role as the Hayes family's daughter-in-law. I could always smile through their tests, but I would never let myself be trampled. I was no longer the powerless girl I once was. So why would I return to that house and subject myself to that humiliation all over again? Maya's arrival slowed the pace of my life. Money was important, but being with my child was paramount. I carved out more time to be with her, to watch her grow. I loved my daughter deeply, and to my surprise, My former in-laws adored her as well. Initially, Mrs. Hayes wanted to throw a lavish one-month celebration for Maya, but I declined, explaining that she was too young for such a large gathering. Instead, when Maya reached her 100th day, we held a proper celebration. I didn't invite my own parents or my brother. Our ties had been severed long ago. I only invited close friends and trusted business partners. The Hayes family, however, treated the event with immense formality, with relatives and friends from their entire extended network in attendance. My former in-laws beamed with joy, publicly gifting Maya an entire building and a yacht named in her honor. Their generosity was on full display, and I didn't refuse the gifts. Maya might be my daughter, but she was also the Hayes family's first grandchild. These things were rightfully hers. Guests quickly adapted, fawning over the tiny girl who had no idea what was happening. We hadn't invited Liam or Chloe, but they showed up late, walking in hand. Chloe, dressed in a pristine white suit, smiled as she presented a set of silver jewelry. "She's still so little," she said. "Real gold and jade might be too heavy. This is more suitable." Without even glancing at the box, Mrs. Hayes gestured for a servant to take it and then had it immediately thrown in the trash. Smiling down at Maya, she said sweetly, "Our little Maya is the only child of the Hayes family. She can't be touched by such lowly things." Her words were veiled, but her meaning was perfectly clear. Chloe's face turned pale with fury, but she had to swallow her anger. Quietly, she reached behind her and pinched Liam's arm hard. Mrs. Hayes turned to her son with a laugh. "Liam, are you so overjoyed you've been struck dumb? Why are you just standing there? Come and hold your daughter." Liam looked at the soft, rosy baby, clearly hesitant. But his expression softened, and a rare look of tenderness flickered across his face. Holding out his hands, he smiled and asked me, "She's so little. Is it okay for me to hold her?" "I don't want to hurt her." I smiled and nodded. "She's over 3 months old, it's fine. Just don't hold her upright for too long. It's better for her spine if you keep her horizontal. Look, she's smiling at you. She really likes her daddy." Liam's face lit up. "She has such a pretty smile. She looks just like I did as a baby. Even the way she blows bubbles is adorable." Mrs. Hayes chimed in. "But Maya is much better behaved than you were. You used to scream your head off every day. You drove a whole team of nannies to nervous breakdowns. But little Maya, she's so quiet with those big, shiny eyes. You can tell she's going to have a blessed life." We all laughed and chatted, and to an outsider, we must have looked like a perfect, happy family. But in Chloe's eyes, this scene must have been torturous. She suddenly abandoned all pretense of decorum and stormed over, grabbing Liam and pulling him behind her as if to stake her claim. I didn't hesitate. The moment she rushed towards us, I scooped Maya into my arms. I would never let anyone endanger my child. Mrs. Hayes' expression turned to ice as she stared Chloe down. "This is a celebration for our family. What are you doing here?" Chloe, accustomed to always getting her way, jabbed a finger toward Mrs. Hayes' face and snapped, "I'm your son's childhood sweetheart. We've been in love for over a decade." "Why shouldn't I be here? You used to love me. You said I was the only one worthy of marrying into the Hayes family. You even said that once I married in, I'd be like your own daughter. And now, just a few years later, this is how you treat me?" "We were in love," Chloe shouted, "and you tore us apart. What do you think this is, some ancient dynasty?" Mrs. Hayes trembled with fury, stunned that Chloe would lose all sense of decency in public. With a slap that echoed through the room, she struck her son across the face. "Look at the kind of woman you've gotten involved with. She's not even through the door, and she already dares to point at me and curse. What will she do once she's actually in the family? Try to bury us all?" Then she turned her sharp gaze on Chloe. "Yes, I said those things once, but have you forgotten what you did? You slept around overseas, disgracing yourself, and now you can't even have children. Is this how the Vance family raises their daughters?" Chloe refused to back down, a smug smile on her face. "It's true, I can't have children," she announced, "but your son got a vasectomy for me. We're a perfect match." As the words left her mouth, the room fell silent. Everyone was stunned. Miss Hayes, already in poor health, collapsed on the spot. Mrs. Hayes clutched her chest, barely remaining upright. My own heart felt like it had been struck. Liam and Chloe couldn't have children. Fate had truly shown favor to me and my daughter. In high society, disagreements are usually handled with subtle discretion. It's rare for disputes to explode so publicly, but the feud between the Hayes and Vance families had become a full-blown spectacle, louder than any street brawl. Still, who could blame them? The revelation that Chloe's actions had led to Liam becoming infertile was a shock. The Hayes family's outrage was understandable, and frankly, I found the whole situation rather absurd. While Chloe certainly bore some responsibility, Liam was not a child. Getting a vasectomy for love had been his own decision. In the world of romance, it was the ultimate dramatic gesture. From Chloe's perspective, she had simply found a man dangerously obsessed with her. While other women might have gossiped about her, many were secretly envious. After all, who wouldn't want a man so devoted he would sacrifice everything? But I didn't envy her at all. My daughter and I were the real winners. Since learning Liam couldn't have more children, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes had treated Maya and me with overwhelming affection. Before the divorce, their attempts to stop Liam had been mere formalities. No matter how far I had come, in their eyes, I was still just a girl from a poor background, an ambitious social climber not worth fighting their own son over. This was especially true after my family had caused a humiliating public scene at their home early in my marriage, crying and rolling on the ground over money. I had dealt with it harshly, beating my brother so badly behind closed doors that he was left with a permanent limp and warning them never to show their faces again in exchange for an annual payment of 100,000 yuan. So, compared to my disgraceful family, it was no surprise the Hayes family had preferred the equally wealthy Vances. But now, with Chloe's outrageous behavior providing a stark contrast, I had become the perfect daughter-in-law in their eyes. They began visiting often, initially under the pretense of encouraging a reconciliation, but I didn't mind. Each visit was more time for them to bond with Maya, which was a positive outcome. What I didn't expect was for Liam himself to show up at my door just 6 months later. He looked a bit weary, calmer than before. The manic energy of his love-obsessed phase was gone, replaced by a heavy, uncertain stillness. I greeted him politely, my smile as warm and unchanged as ever. "If you've come to see Maya," I said, "I can take her to the old house sometime. There's no need for you to come all this way." Liam stared at me for a long time before finally speaking. "Anna, let's get back together. Let's try again. Maya needs a complete family. Let's love her together." His voice was hesitant at first, but his conviction grew with the second sentence, as if he genuinely believed it. I looked down and smiled. "We got married because of Chloe. We divorced because of her. And now you want to get back together? Has she done something else?" "Liam," I said, my voice gentle but clear, "we've known each other since high school. Maybe you never saw me as a real friend, but I always appreciated you and Chloe. That's why I willingly gave 6 years of my life to you and your family. Please, out of respect for that time, let me go now. I won't cling to you or fall apart. But I do have a heart. I know how to love, and I know how to feel pain. Please," I said calmly, "don't waste any more of my time. I am not an object you can pick up and put down at your convenience. And for heaven's sake, don't use our daughter as an excuse." I looked him directly in the eyes. "Ask yourself, have you ever been a good father? You were the one who said you wanted a child, but from the moment Chloe returned, have you thought about your daughter even once?" He murmured something about failing me, about how maybe I brought this on myself since I had my own motives from the beginning. But Maya was the daughter he once claimed he desperately wanted, and yet he had abandoned her completely for Chloe. He was not worthy of being a father. I kept smiling, but my tears wouldn't stop. They welled up and spilled over, trailing down my cheeks and leaving dark stains on the floor. Liam fled in disgrace. I watched his retreating figure from my window, the corners of my mouth curling into a mocking smile. To me, his value was now negligible. He certainly wasn't worth sharing a bed with again. He had only come back because his relationship with Chloe had imploded once more, and she, in a fit of rage, had left again. He just wanted me to patch up his wounds. It all made sense when I thought about it. Chloe, for all her flaws, was the sole heiress of the powerful Vance family. She never needed to please in-laws or cater to a man. She had only returned because she'd grown bored of her European flings, who couldn't provide the intense, all-consuming romance she craved from Liam. But that didn't mean she would ever change or compromise. She had zero patience for the mundane affairs of the Hayes family business or the duties of a traditional wife. Her explosive fight with the Hayes family wasn't about love. It was a blow to her pride when the man she considered hers didn't fall into her hands as expected. Now that she realized a direct confrontation would get her nowhere, it was logical for her to leave. They might have loved each other, but they were never right for each other. Liam might be a scoundrel, but he at least had a sense of shame. After I turned him down, he didn't bother me again. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, however, were not so easily dissuaded. With Chloe gone, they were desperate to bring Maya back into their fold, with me as part of the package. Mrs. Hayes requested a serious conversation, laying out the pros and cons of our current custody arrangement and asking me to decide. But I no longer needed the Hayes family's power, so I simply smiled and declined. "Mom," I said kindly, "if you truly want custody of Maya, I won't object. She carries the Hayes name and is your granddaughter. But think about it. Liam lost his mind over Chloe once. What's to stop him from doing it again for another woman? When that chaos returns, how will Maya see her father? Also, you know what my family is like. If I were to remarry into the family, they would become arrogant and cause trouble again. Do you really want to see them behaving so shamefully?" I gently persuaded her to consider the benefits of our current arrangement and the risks of forcing a reunion. Mrs. Hayes hesitated. After a separation, people tend to romanticize the past, forgetting the daily frictions. When we lived together, there were constant conflicts. Perhaps it was better to maintain this respectful distance, like extended relatives. Eventually, the Hayes family stopped talking about remarriage. It wasn't because they hadn't considered sidelining me to take Maya, but because I was no longer someone they could push around. Public opinion was firmly on my side after their family scandal, and more importantly, I had built my own powerful network of influential alumni, socialites, and businesswomen. If the Hayes family dared to fight me openly, they would find I was no longer the weak girl they once knew. I had finally become the woman I had always dreamed of being. The next time I saw Chloe was 2 years later, at Paris Fashion Week. She was impeccably dressed, as always, but even from across the runway, through the crowds and shifting lights, I could see the fine lines around her eyes and the weariness in her expression. For a woman who worships beauty, foundation creasing into wrinkles is a mortal sin. Yet, there she was, her makeup looking worse than some of the models on the catwalk. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I saw a flicker of hatred. I offered her a gentle smile, just like I used to. After the show, as I was leaving with a few top fashion editors laughing and chatting, Chloe stepped forward and blocked my path. "Anna," she said, "can we talk?" I smiled and nodded to my companions, then followed her to a nearby cafe. She remained silent for a while, clearly expecting me to speak first. When I didn't, she lost patience. "So, you're feeling pretty pleased with yourself now, aren't you? I bought you for 10,000 yuan, and now you're parading around as some high society lady." My smile didn't waver. "Chloe, thank you for that 10,000 yuan, truly. As for where I am today, I earned it. No one has the right to be jealous." Her eyes flashed with venom. "You earned it? You climbed the ladder by sleeping with my boyfriend, stealing him behind my back. You're nothing but a shameless social climber." I folded my hands on the table, my tone growing colder. "I really don't understand your hostility. You were the one who pushed Liam onto me. It was you who took him back while we were still married. You were spending nights with my husband while I was 8 months pregnant. In everything that happened, I was the one who was wronged, yet I never once spoke ill of you." I met her gaze directly. "Chloe, have you had your fun with men, or have they had their fun with you? Either way, you can't handle the consequences, can you? Whatever I was in the past, I have risen on my own. And you've already begun your decline. Your selfishness and recklessness have made your parents a laughingstock. You've lost your way in business. And now you blame me instead of looking at yourself. Don't you think that's a bit ridiculous?" I paused. "Back in high school, why do you think I agreed to play your obedient little dog? Because I needed money and protection. Our classmates, born into privilege, didn't just mock me, they bullied me. And you, Chloe, you led them. You loved watching me grovel. I was just obedient enough that it stopped being fun for you, and that's why I got to stay. Being your lapdog was my best-case scenario. Without it, I might not have survived those 3 years. I never thought about revenge. I knew the world's rules weren't written for people like me. All I could do was swim against the current, give up my dignity, my time, my freedom, just to climb out. And I did. But you, Chloe, couldn't even stand still. In our circle, stability is everything. You should be grateful your parents built such a strong foundation. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be qualified to sit across from me today. But I don't think that will last. The day this circle casts you out is not far off. When Liam and I ran into each other at the airport on our return from Paris, the first thing he said was, "Chloe gave you a hard time again, didn't she? She's always been like that. You don't have to put up with her anymore." It was funny, really. He used to be her most loyal defender. If she had wanted to kill someone, he would have handed her the knife and taken the blame. Just like in high school, whenever she was upset, she'd work me to exhaustion, and he would just smile, pull her into his lap, and praise her for being so pure and sweet. The memory was a fleeting sting. I smiled brightly. No, not at all. We were just old acquaintances catching up. She doesn't seem to be doing very well, though, and she still loves you, Liam. Maybe you should go back to Paris and find her. I hope you two work things out and stay together forever, tormenting each other for life. Liam stared at me, dazed. Anna, you've changed, he muttered. You're nothing like the girl you used to be. When you smile now, it's like there's a halo around you. You're radiant. It was the first compliment he'd ever given me, and it came after our divorce. How ironic. I lowered my gaze and said nothing, too tired to engage. Seeing I wasn't going to reply, he fell silent. But halfway through the drive, he spoke again. Anna, I've let go of Chloe. Her love, it's like poison. I'm afraid of it now. I don't want to be near her again. Can we just live a normal life, the two of us, from now on? I knew Chloe had been calling him constantly for weeks, and he hadn't answered. Maybe he really did want to cut ties. And I knew that was one of the reasons Chloe hated me so much. In her mind, I had stolen him from her. I gave a calm smile. Liam, when you had the car accident, you and Chloe weren't fighting, were you? You say her love is poison now, but wasn't it that very intensity, that suffocating passion that you once loved most? I know the truth. The two of you were driving and discussing how to pressure me into a divorce. You were so engrossed in the conversation that Chloe leaned over and laid her head on your shoulder. You loved each other so recklessly that even a near-death crash couldn't stir an ounce of guilt in either of you. What Chloe did was never my concern. But you, Liam, you were my husband. You are Maya's father. And honestly, you disgust me. But in a way, I'm grateful for that disgust. It made it easy to step over you as I climbed, without guilt or hesitation. When we strip everything down to pure utility and gain, that's the best kind of relationship we can have. I have my own business now. I manage the portion of the Hayes family assets that rightfully belong to Maya. Every day of my life is filled with a joy you couldn't possibly imagine. Looking at my little girl, so sweet but with a spark of mischief, I often think back to my own childhood. I still remember the look on my parents' faces as they sat at the dinner table, casually discussing how much they could get for me in an arranged marriage, as if I were a soulless object sitting right there. It took everything I had to break away from them, but I could never shake the deep-seated fear that lived inside me. That's why I craved money, power, and everything that could make me strong. And now, after having my daughter, I finally understand. Only love can truly heal the wounds left by a lack of love. Every time she gives me one of her sweet smiles, it soothes the broken parts of me better than anything else ever could. I have walked through fields of thorns to earn the heavy, beautiful crown I now wear. And I hope that my daughter, and every girl, can hold her head high and wear a crown of her own, without having to lower her head into the dirt just to earn it, the way I did.